All right, part 3 showing you just how to quickly open an image file in Photoshop rather than create a new blank canvas. Pretty self-explanatory, but we're going to go to File, Open, and just find an image that you have, whether it's on the desktop or downloads or wherever on your computer you have them saved. Pick one to open, and there you have it. So you can see over here in our layers, we now have a layer, it's called layer 0, and our photo is on that. I do want to show you how to check your image size and resolution. This is very important for when we start doing any kind of like collaging or adding images like image composites. You want to make sure that if you're getting images from places like the internet that you know what quality those images are. So before I do anything else, I'm going to go right up to image, come down to image size, and this little box is going to give me a lot of important information. It gives me the dimension in pixels, the size of the file, and it also gives me the dimensions in inches. So it's 11 inches wide by 7.5 inches high or tall. But look at this, resolution is 72. So that means that it was saved to go on someone's website, or it was saved to be seen on a screen, but not to be like the full quality printed version. What you can do that's kind of interesting, at least in my book, if you ever were curious like what the largest size you could print this out at high quality would be, if you uncheck resample, and I won't bore you with all the details about what that does, but unchecking resample, and then notice when I change the resolution to 300, see how the width and height changed drastically. So there's no new pixels. It was using the same number of pixels in that file, but it said, okay, you want 300 pixels for every inch instead of just 72, and it kind of condensed the whole image to pack that much information into each pixel. So really, at the quality it would take to print, this image is only going to be like 1 by 2 inches, which is tiny. So this is never something that you would want to print out. But just for your information, you'd be able to check the size and quality of an image. So if you ever open it and the resolution is 72, and you can't still have a large file when you uncheck resample and change that to 300, if it ends up being like an inch high file, you would need a better quality resource to work with. But for today, we're just going to mess around with this since we're just getting to know kind of some of these processes. So I'm not going to change anything. I just click cancel, but that's a good way to check like the size and quality of the images that you're working with in Photoshop. So touching back on these tools again, the selection tools here, any of these, like this is the square or the rectangular marquee tool. If I select that, drag across on this layer, I have this layer selected, drag across a part of the photo, it is selecting those pixels. When I move my mouse to the center of that selection, I can move the marquee around, but the second that I change from the actual marquee tool where I'm deciding what to select, and I go to my move tool, which the shortcut is V, so if I click V, or click on the icon, now you can see that I'm able to actually move that chunk of the image and start to rearrange things. However, right now I'm able to move them separately because I have the marquee tool enabled, but if I were to click off on another tool, or deselect that, I'm sorry, so Control D to deselect, that change, you can't pick these pixels back up and reveal what's beneath it because everything's on one layer. If I turn this off, it all goes together. So this piece that I moved has now been flattened into the rest of this part of the image. If I try to, check this out. If I'm like, oh, I want to see what's behind there, I don't like what I did, and I want to move this back. Okay, well, I can select that, go to my move tool and try to move it, but now it's kind of sandwiched the piece beneath it. So it was flattened. Those pixels are no longer there. They were hidden and gone forever. You can Control Z your way out of it. So if I do Control D to deselect, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to go back now. I've ruined my photo. Control Z once will take you one step back, but for whatever reason in Photoshop, they make you hold Control Alt Z to go back multiple steps. So a certain number of these steps you can do to get back out of, a change that you don't like, but it limits you to a certain number. So just be careful about charging ahead and making permanent changes. However, if you want to select a piece of a photo and make a new layer out of it, if I have this selected, the quickest way is just to do Control J, and that duplicates whatever you have selected. If you have the whole layer selected, it'll duplicate the whole layer. If you have just a small selection, it'll duplicate that small piece. So notice I just turned off our original image and turned back on that little, I turned off our original image and kept that little slice that we selected visible. But touching back on this like selection and making permanent changes to things, there's a few steps again that I always want you to do when you open Photoshop, and now is a good time to get into that habit. It's cool to have pieces that you can duplicate. Oh, I think my mouse is lagging. There we go. So it's cool to be able to duplicate things. I mean, you're able to make copies without harming your original, but when we had selected things and we're moving stuff around and see, it just gave me an error because I hadn't selected the layer that I actually wanted to work with. So if I start moving pieces around, I've got my M for Marquee tool, V for my move tool, and I just start messing around with stuff. And I realize that I'm too far gone and I've just totally botched my original image. I don't have the original saved somewhere untouched. I'm kind of screwed. Yeah, you could go back and find it on the internet and re-download it. But if you do happen to save over this, or you only have a certain number of back steps, you know, if you go to step backward here or Control Z, Alt Control Z, you're stuck. Your original is no longer usable. It is what it is. So what I want to show you, let's test how many Control Z's we have here. Alt Control Z's. Okay, so we were able to get back to our original at that point. But first thing that you're going to do when you come into Photoshop, forget making selections, forget drawing, forget doing anything else. I want you to immediately name your layer. So I'm going to call this original. Again, by double clicking the name and typing in what I want to name that layer. And right off the bat, we're going to make a duplicate of the original and protect our original. So again, there's a shortcut you can use, Control J, like I said, or if you have the whole layer selected, it'll make a copy of that. So no matter which one of these I have turned on, they're exactly the same thing because it's an exact duplicate of our original. So I made my copy of the original, and now I'm just going to hide this one and keep it out of my way so that I always know, no matter how much I might bungle this one that I'm editing, I have an original to return to. You should also be able to lock it, but I'm not sure why the lock icon. There we go. That's a weird feature, but apparently if you do want to lock a layer, like if we want to lock and hide our original, you cannot lock something that is hidden. So this little lock icon here is grayed out. But once I make it visible and click that lock icon and then hide it again, and now it's not only hidden so I can't see it to mess with it. I know this is hard to even describe while we're looking at two of the same layer, but the original one is hidden so I can't see it or mess with it, and it's locked so I can't make any changes to it. And that way we're free to come and make some changes to this layer without having to worry about messing up our only original. Oh, you guys, I'm making my own mistakes. I do this all the time. I'm on the original, which is locked and hidden, and when I try to move something, it says that layer is locked. So it's good protection from yourself. Make sure that you click on the layer that you actually want to edit. So now I can come around and start editing things without worrying about losing my only original photo. So all I'm doing now, literally with the Marquee tool and my move tool, switching between V and M, so V for move and M for Marquee, I'm just grabbing little slices of the photo and moving them around. So just so you can experiment, just pushing pixels around and doing different stuff, see what happens. Control D to deselect. And then I always know, worst case scenario, I have my original there untouched. So first thing when we open Photoshop, we did that shortcut Shift Control Alt to delete the settings. The very next thing you should do is name your layers. The very next thing after that is duplicate your original so that you always have a backup. I met my time limit, but that should be enough to at least get you started just experimenting in Photoshop, and we will take it from here with some lessons in the future. All right, good luck.